Okay, so we've got a great group of people here, a really great story of collaboration, a great story of the outcome. Hamid with IRSM, Jana with True Angle, and Ted, a result of this collaboration that has proven to be a phenomenal outcome and a really great story for the innovation that can happen when organizations come together for a common good and a common goal. So I think we're going to start with Ted, and we're going to go through a little bit of your story in regards to where you started to the point of where you met this team, and then we'll jump into how you guys kind of came up with the solutions that resulted in the outcome that Ted now has with his enjoyment of a great normal life from when you were back in the earlier days. So Ted, can you take us a little bit through that story?
Sure. I was diagnosed with head and neck cancer. I had cancer at the base of my tongue in fall of 2016, and I had a 14.5-hour surgery in January of 2017, and they took out a chunk of my tongue and all my lymph nodes, and I was in the hospital for 2 weeks with a breathing tube and a feeding tube. And when I came out, I was not able to swallow properly, nor able to speak properly. And because of the tongue reconstruction, they took a chunk out of my arm and made that into my tongue. So I had to teach my arm how to swallow. And my swallowing was, I had therapy at the University Hospital and at the Cross Cancer Clinic, but it was there was a machine that they hooked up to you that was the size of a refrigerator, and it would measure the muscle movement when you swallowed, and it was I was able to use it a couple of times, but it's sort of like going to if you want to get stronger and you go to the store and you try some weights out for a few minutes, and then your girlfriend takes you back there, or your wife in your case, a month later, and you try them again, you're not going to get stronger. Yeah. You got to do it. You got to buy the things, and you got to do it every day. So going to the Cross Cancer Clinic, I was only able to do it a couple of times that it was offered to me. And my swallowing was just not getting better. I went to the head and neck cancer support groups, and everybody was having the same sort of problems. And there's things that are a result of the surgery and the radiation that everyone has. Red wine tastes like kerosene to me, which is a tragedy, but that's a whole nother story. And I was at the doctor's and for one of my 3-month checks, and the surgeon said, "How's your swallowing?" And I said, "It's a word I can't use."
It's in the craps. It's not good.
Not good.
Yeah.
So I was introduced somewhat later to Jana, a month or so later, to Jana, Dr. Rieger and her team, and she had a device that was, instead of being the size of a refrigerator, was the size of a pack of matches that fit underneath my chin and was like the weights, just small, but I was able to use it with the program that they have for 6 weeks as part of a clinical trial. And my swallowing, I started in November, and for 6 weeks, which continued through Christmas, I like to say the reason I was able to enjoy Christmas dinner was because of the device that Dr. Rieger developed.
You betcha. That's super awesome. So that's a great segue to get into this team right here and what you guys have done to allow for this to kind of happen. Now, we're going to kind of go a little bit back and forth, because I know that with IRSM, your technology, I mean, we took a tour of your facility. Mind-blowing stuff, in regards to reconstruction of jaws. You guys are doing stuff with hearing. You guys are doing all sorts of really neat and like groundbreaking things in the process, the 3D printing, super cool stuff. And then Jana, with this partnership, you were able to get the technology developed and tested and grow into True Angle. So I'm going to start with Hamid in regards to IRSM. Take us through a little bit of what you guys do, and then we'll kind of jump into the relationship and how that came to be with True Angle.
Sure. Maybe I'll start off by giving you a little bit of background about where IRSEM started and how it started. IRSEM was founded back in 1993. At the time, it was known as Compro. So we've been around for over 25 years. And I'll focus on some of the uniqueness of IRSM. IRSM is composed of a multidisciplinary team. So we have surgeons, we have prosthodontists, we have speech-language pathologists, we have anaplastologists. Say that 5 times.
Yeah, no doubt.
And so the beauty is all of these practitioners come together to provide care for the patient throughout the continuum of care. We don't look at it as per procedure or per visit, but rather we look at it as caring for the patient throughout the journey. And IRSM is based on a partnership between Alberta Health Services, Covenant Health, and the University of Alberta. We are our rehabilitative facilities located at the Misericordia Hospital, but it's a partnership. And in terms of what we do, we focus primarily on treating head and neck cancer, and the treatment for us doesn't stop at removing the cancer. We focus on bringing the patient back to as close as possible to normal activities. Right. And our focus for the last decade, or more than a decade, is focusing on the outcome that the patient wants. We won't look at it as, let's look at how many surgeries we could do. But as important as that number is, as important as the volume of surgeries is, we also need to look at the outcomes. So we've been measuring patient outcomes for over a decade now. So the collaboration with the university, or the partnership with the University of Alberta, is extremely important because IRSM focuses on evidence-based care, and the evidence is generated by the researchers from the University of Alberta, such as Dr. Rieger. Right. So I'll pause there and perhaps have her.
Well, I can just kind of touch base a little bit on some of that stuff. I mean, you guys are groundbreaking, like I said earlier. The technology you're coming out through is basically only being used here. Like there's other people that are starting to adapt it and develop it, but you guys are kind of like, you've written the book.
Yeah, we're pioneers in many of the head and neck reconstruction areas. So for example, digital planning of surgeries. You can imagine a person having head and neck cancer, and they go into the OR, and the surgeon, cuts the patient and looks at the cancer and says, I think the cancer is here, so I'm going to cut here, I'm going to cut a little bit there, I'm going to cut a little bit there. So in some ways, it's a surgeon's assessment of where the cancer is and where to cut. What we have done is we've removed that, I don't like to call it this, but the guesswork out of it. Right. So we digitally plan every one of our surgeries. And what I mean by that is we take the CAT scan image of the patient and we 3D print cutting guides for the surgeon. So these are 3D printed guides that the surgeon takes into the OR, puts it on the patient, and knows exactly where to cut, as opposed to just eyeballing it. And we've also developed something called the Alberta reconstruction technique. And this is a new technique that was developed by the surgeons within IRSM, and is now being used worldwide and is referred to as the Alberta reconstruction technique.
And the name Alberta is tied to it. That's awesome. So to segue here, I know we were talking about the guesswork, and we were looking at some of the patients that some of your case studies, and some of your nurses were awesome to run us through some things. And so when it came to the replacement of the jaw, replacement of the tongue, sometimes there's the loss of nerves, sensation, and the awareness when it comes to swallowing, even speech. We were talking with the nurse in regards to how they were doing molding so that if you talked a certain way before, they could actually get you back to that same way by adding or taking away from some of the implement that's put into the jaw. So now, when we talk about swallowing, in Ted's case, let's move over to True Angle and talk about where this collaboration came together to create the solution for what Ted was running into.
Sounds good. So 20 years ago, we started studying what happened with patients like Ted, what their swallowing outcomes were like. what their speech was like. One of the things that we heard from patients, we knew that they were having swallowing problems. We could see that when we did our assessments of them. But what we heard from them was how this completely changed their lives. And it's something you don't think about unless that's been taken away from you. So the fear of sitting down and eating every single meal, that you're going to cough and choke on that. And losing social circles because you can't go out and eat with your friends. So it was a really big problem. We knew that there was a therapy that could help patients, but like Ted said, we also knew that they only came in once in a while. In fact, I had a clinical trial that I was trying to run on a therapy protocol, and I had to shut it down because it was just unrealistic to get patients to come in every single day. Now, we know if we can get this treatment to them that we can prevent some really serious consequences. And one of those consequences is aspiration pneumonia. And that basically means that something that shouldn't have has gone into the lungs and caused a pneumonia. And so even if patients are trying to follow instructions about blending and drinking their food, if that's what they have to do to get food in, or if they've had a tube put in their stomach, aspiration pneumonia can still happen. And so it's one of these things that costs our healthcare system an extraordinary amount of money, and it's very dangerous. So when patients get this, they often end up in the hospital, and what we know is 30% of patients will die in the hospital from this. Now this is, and Ted can speak to that.
I was in for 2 weeks, over 2 weeks with aspiration pneumonia after my surgery, and yeah, I had a 30% chance of dying. I was in the ICU, and I recall very clearly looking up and saying to the doctor, "Am I going to die?" And he said, "Ted, no, I'm not going to let that happen."
Yeah.
But I was terrified.
Yeah.
And
now,
yeah.
the solutions come up.
Yeah, so if you can imagine you survive your cancer, to be sick with something like this, it doesn't make sense if we can prevent that. But the therapy that we had, it was unrealistic to expect that busy professionals like Ted are going to come in for this. So with some of the people that were working around at the time, and Hamid had mentioned that we have an interdisciplinary team. So we had, there were some speech pathologists that were working in my lab. There's a biomedical engineer. And one of the speech paths, Dr. Gabby Constantinescu, said, you know, why can't we do something where we make this so the patient can take it home with them? And Dylan Scott, who's our Chief Technical Officer now in True Angle, he said, well, let's try. So it started with that concept with this interdisciplinary work. And then what really propelled the whole thing forward was the Alberta Cancer Foundation. So they funded us for 5 years to develop and test a product. And so that's what we did. And the product that we tested and developed is called the Mobility. It's taken this refrigerator-sized device that Ted talked about getting hooked up to, and it's made it into something very small that the patient can take home with him.
Right, yeah, you betcha. And I think
Yes.
we can pull it out, we can take a look at it.
We say it's like having a virtual clinician in your pocket, and
Right.
ta-da, there
Isn't
it
that
is.
something?
Yeah.
Right?
So it literally goes underneath your throat, communicates with a cell phone, and you can see when you swallow the graph move on the cell phone, and it provides for you a way of seeing how you're getting stronger in your throat.
Yeah.
When you're lifting the weights, as with your wife, remember? When you're lifting the weights, you can see it and you can feel it, but not knowing how to make yourself a better swallower, you just don't. But with this, you can see it right there on your cell phone.
We take advantage, it's like breathing, you take advantage of those little things that you just do, right? Until it's taken away, you're not focusing on those muscles. Like I know in weight training, I've done weight training myself, but that muscle awareness and focusing on it's the flexing of that, the movement of that, but you have to tell your brain to make that connection to ensure that you're doing it properly or that you're working that right area. And I would never think of these muscles in here, right? So that's a really again, you don't know until it's taken away. And so this is a really unique piece that's going to help you. And it's not just in, if I'm correct, it's not just in cancer patients as well. Like a lot of adults above 50 have run into this similar issue as well. And it's just over time, age takes its toll. So this is very adaptable in a wide range of things. Love that it's attached to the cell phone. You don't need to take, having to take, that little piece back home with you is awesome. And it's attached to your cell phone, and it works fantastic. So that's super great. So to this collaboration, with TED being the result of a great outcome, what are some of so we've talked about some of your partners when it comes to Covenant Health, Alberta Health Services. What are some of the other partners that you guys have worked with to kind of get you to this stage right now?
Did you want to go first? Should I?
Go ahead.
So there are a couple of them. Health City is an important one. So going forward, should I talk about where IRSEM is going at this stage?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
Talk about what is the next, what's the next page? And we all know that a lot of times the next page comes from partnerships, more collaboration.
Yeah, but the culture at IRSM is not so much to focus on what's shiny, what's the new shiny gadget out there. The line of sight is always towards how does this improve patient outcomes. Mm-hmm. So organizations such as Health City have been great in making the connections with potential partners. Gotcha. We have existing partnerships with some large multinational companies such as Oticon. Oticon is, I believe, the largest or the second largest company in the world to make the hearing aid devices. Am I correct, Jenna?
Oh, wow. Okay.
They're based out of Denmark. And they, in fact, consult with our program director of audiology when they're developing new devices. And they've talked about using IRSM as a testing ground for devices that are being developed by them. And there's always these consults that are happening between our program director and Oticon, and they have a long-standing relationship. We are the global CEO of Medtronic, the largest medical device company in the world, visited IRSM in 2018. And we are currently looking at ways we can partner with Medtronic, because in this fiscal climate, I think partnerships are extremely crucial to sustain and improve research and innovation happening at IRSM. And that's, we're looking at areas such as virtual reality, artificial intelligence, robotics. But the first question we ask is, this sounds really promising, but can we generate data to first show that improves patient outcomes? Mm-hmm. So we were recently looking at partnering with a virtual reality company within Edmonton to see how we can incorporate virtual reality into our workflow to generate data to prove first that it improves patient outcomes before talking about purchasing that technology.
That sounds fantastic. Just to touch a little bit to what you've said before I move on, I love that the quality of care for the patient, and again, your nurses took us through some of those. I call them nurses, but they're more your
you can call us our
lab techs. I
sure,
guess we could call that. Yeah. But they took us through how you travel through the life of an individual. So if it's a child on the auditory end of things, they're constantly going through evolution as they grow. The pieces that you're giving to them is adjusting and changing. And with some of the ocular, with the eyes, some of that, the detail you guys are putting into that is mind blowing. The summer, with the gentleman that had to have the ear, the summer and the regular ear, the winter ear, the summer ear. Unbelievable, super cool. It really got me, doing that tour really got me inspired. It was super awesome to see that come out of here. And again, you guys are reaching out into the rest of the world. You're touching everywhere. And something like True Angle, exact same thing. This is not just a Canadian and Alberta focus piece. This can go out, the fingers can spread. And so now going to True Angle, where are some of the opportunities for your guys' growth? What's the next chapter in your guys' book?
So the next chapter is going to market. And you talked about partnerships. There have been a lot that have been really important for us to get to that next chapter. A lot of government work with, for example, Edmonton Economic Development, and they have a trade accelerator program that we went through, and the Institute for Health Economics, who's helping us understand what is the impact of getting this treatment to patients. So the next step being going to market, another partnership that we've developed through the Canadian Trade Commission is being part of Matter Health, which is in Chicago. So all these things are meant to bridge that gap. Having jumped from academia into entrepreneurship, there is a valley. You got to take a big run and jump. But with all these partners around, that makes it easier. And so to get to that next step, which is to go to market, we also have our investment partners. And a lot of that came through the Creative Destruction Lab program run out of the Haskayne School in Calgary, which we were graduates of. So getting to market and being able to get this into the hands of the patients is our primary focus right now. So there's lots of stuff that goes around doing that with regulatory and actually just creating awareness about this for people that this is out there. We will be entering the US market first. We're excited about that. And at the same time, we're working to have meet Health Canada regulations so that we can be within the Canadian market as well. Another way that we're participating in the Canadian market is that we'll be running our clinical trials in Alberta, and we're looking at an expanded trial now across Alberta. The trial that Ted was in had some great results, but that's just the tip of the iceberg. We want to increase those numbers and get more patients enrolled, as well as looking at other populations for this.
Awesome. And just to talk about some of the again, fingers spreading out there, you guys getting down into the United States, super awesome to hear that there is that open communication and that they're willing to have you guys down there and help nurture you as well. I understand it's a mentorship program that's based out there that you guys will be taking part of to get you, kind of on board with their system and how they do business and how they, how their programs run. So that's super awesome and a great advantage. And again, nice to see that the openness of communication there to bring something that, again, is so important. We always talk, and I love that we can go back to this, is that you don't know what you've lost until you've lost it. And in Ted's case, and we're going to end it here with Ted, talking to this great result and the great outcome of this collaboration and what this can do for a number of other people. Where do you think, without something like this, where would you be today?
I would be probably at a plateau of where I was, which was getting most of my caloric intake through Ensure, drinking bottles of Ensure. And that's how many of the people at the Head and Neck Cancer Support Group were getting their nutrition. And when I said there's a clinical trial that you can take advantage of, there was a lady that had not had solid food for 5 years. And after she finished it, and you should hear her story because it brings tears to your eyes when she tells it. And she went and she bought a McDonald's hamburger, took it home and ate it with a knife and fork and cried. Yeah. And I had a double hamburger yesterday, driving back from Calgary, a Peter's drive-in burger. We've all had them because we're from Edmonton. And I could not have done that without this device.
Wow.
The mobility has made me able to eat again. Thank you, Jana.
Well, this is a great story to show people that are out there that are going through, a similar case that you've gone through, and multiple other cases. Again, with ocular or crash victims, things like that. That your guys' technology can give them hope and to bring them back to some sort of normalcy of life that they had at one point. So again, thank you so much, you guys, for coming in and sharing this story. Ted, for coming in and sharing your story with us. This is a fantastic piece for Alberta. It's a fantastic piece for the rest of the world if we can kind of get that messaging out there and have people be open to adopting the new technology and the new innovations that are happening here in Alberta. Thank you so much, you guys.
Thank you for having us.
Awesome.
Thank you.
What that's called.